Jesus Christ. All right, guys. Good evening. By the way, we're not going to talk about it tonight, but congratulations to the Atlanta Braves winning the World Series, their first in 26 years. And they did it on Georgia's darkest day, Election Day, which Georgia actually doesn't realize gives the people the possibility to vote fairly. So at least Georgia, where you can't actually all vote fairly, you can celebrate a World Series fairly. Anyway, I'm Stephen Rabinowitz.
I'm Jake Kaplan.
I'm Anthony Strait.
And Joe Tufaro.
Hello, gentlemen. Welcome to the MidSeason NFL College Basketball Preview edition of On the Sports Lines. Well, baseball is over. Congrats, Freddie Freeman. Football is 8/18 over. Congrats, Roger Goodell. And college basketball is about to begin. Congrats to the 1,000 preseason tournaments that you never know existed. But first, we start with our resident football expert, writer, and a man who probably yells at his TV every time he sees Dean Blandino, Mike Pereira, or Terry McCauley on television. I'm leaving Steratore out of this. Mr. Joe Tufaro. He writes, he does almost everything online. Good evening, sir.
How are you? Good to see everybody again.
Good to see you too, my friend.
This is going to be a very fun show. So let's start with our spirited NFL debate. We're not going to even get to college football here. All right. So both New York teams are almost at the midpoint of their season. The New York Giants will actually be past it after this Sunday. The 2-6 Giants can take solace. Okay, I'm not really totally sure what they could take solace in. The only team with the worst record with them in the NFC is the Lions. Even the 6-10 team from a year ago seems like a distant memory. I'm not being dramatic. It's just how I think how most of us feel. So, Joe, we're going to do a progress report of the offense, defense, and coaching. And this is not the progress report that as a kid, you always got intercepted in the mail before your parents got it, like Carson Wentz was throwing with his left hand out at the end zone. Oh. We're just talking about a simple progress report. So, Jay, start us off.
Yeah. All right.
This
So
could be a very quick show.
5 minutes.
We got stuff to talk about with the Giants. We'll pick up time when we talk about gangrene. They
both are the same team, by the way, just to let you know. We'll get to that too.
Agree to disagree, partner. To me, it's been an interesting first half for the Giants offense. Only 19.5 points a game. That's 24th. Their point differential is minus 5.5. They have converted a little below average on third down. They're 21st at 38%. Anthony's detailed ad nauseum their issues in the red zone. Their touchdown percentage is 31 out of 32. They haven't gotten there a lot. I think Daniel Jones has improved, but there's no running back in the top 50 in rushing yards. Jones leads his team with 241.
Yeah, there is. He's standing on the sideline.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
And there's no
I heard he can do some stuff too. That's what
they've
told
no
me.
Top 50, nobody in the top 15 catches or yards. Joe, I think Jones has shown some overall improvement this season. His completion percentage and his average, passing yards per game, his yards per attempt, his interception percentage are all career bests. And other than those 2 bad games in a row against the Cowboys and the Rams, his passer rating in every other game has not been below 90. He's topped 100 twice. He recovered from those 2 awful games, post passer ratings of about 96 in consecutive games. Done it all with injuries wrecking havoc on his playmakers. Barkley, Galladay, Shepard, Slayton, Tony, all been members of that MASH unit this year. He only has 7 turnovers in 8 games, 5 interceptions, and 2 fumbles. Of those 5 picks, 1 was a Hail Mary at the end of a first half. 1 was Evan Ingram's fault. 1 was because Sterling Shepard slipped. I think Garrett has done a decent job of trying to open up the playbook a little more this season. Jones has made some plays in the passing game. Some have even been off script. Despite his receivers having the 4th worst drop rate in the NFL. Protection's been better. He's only been pressured on a little under 21% of his dropbacks. Has helped. He's shown some improved pocket awareness. He still has those moments like that, that interception in the Chiefs game Monday night where he stares down a receiver, doesn't see the linebacker coming who jumps the route. And the struggles in the 2-minute offense. I don't know who that reflects more on, Jones or Garrett, but I'm thinking if these guys get healthy, the offense can actually have more games where they score 20 points or more. They're 2-2 in those games as opposed to 17 or less where they're 0-4. At this point, Joe, I mean, is this offense where you thought it would be, and is it what you thought it would be?
No, neither one, because it's almost like they came out of the offseason and didn't make any moves because, as I told you, as we all agreed on, rookies get injured, right? So Kadarius Toney was out for the first couple of weeks. He couldn't play. He comes back, he gets hurt again, but he's off and on. He's 80%, he's 70%. You can see how dynamic he is and how big a playmaker he can be. Carl Banks calls him third and Tony because he seems to be able to convert third and 14s, third and 19s. He's been very, very good for this offense. But he's really good when there's a Kenny Galladay on the other side. There's a Saquon Barkley in the backfield. There's a Kyle Rudolph. There's a Shepard. There's Slayton. There's, everybody. They haven't had all guys together, except maybe for one game for a half, maybe, when everybody was actually on the field. And then Jones got hurt in the game in the Dallas game. So no, they're not anywhere close to where they should be because they can't play together. And it's sad to see that they can't. We'll get to this later with the other question about coaching staff and all that kind of stuff. But I think the offense, I think it works fine. I think I don't think you can give it a grade or even give Jason Garrett a grade when he doesn't have all the players that he's supposed to have. And it happens in the middle of the week sometimes, right? You lose guys in the middle of the week. You lost your starting center, for God's sakes, in week one. You lose. Andrew Thomas was playing fantastic. Andrew Thomas was grading out great as far from PFF and all these other people. Everybody had said, oh, look how much he's matured. Look how well he's playing. He gets hurt. And so now you got to switch Soldier to the other side. And you got to put Pert in, and then he gets hurt, and you got to put somebody else. So the offensive line has actually been pretty good. The first few weeks, they were very good. And they started to show a little bit, even without Gates. Billy Price walked in and did very well. So I think it's tough. I was looking today online for something else and talking about guys who were Gold Glove finalists in baseball. Mm-hmm. And they said that Francisco Lindor was a finalist for a Gold Glove. Now, if you're a Mets fan and you watch the games this year, Lindor only made 6 or 7 errors, but he made them in the 8th inning with a guy on first base with two outs that he couldn't get.
It's when you make them, not how many.
Yep. And they give up 3 more runs. So you're like, yeah, that's great. His statistics are fantastic, but who cares? It's when you do stuff. It's how you do things. It's who you use to do them. So I can't even give a grade to the offense, and I don't think anybody else should be able to either. Daniel Jones has won Player of the Week, right? He's won Offensive Player of the Week. Other guys have won awards. That's great. That's all fine that they show that they can do it at different times. But without having everybody there and again, the biggest story coming into the year, I guess this is the best way to answer the question is, and I do intend on answering the question. The best way of answering the question.
You don't have to if you don't want to. You've done enough so far. We
yes,
don't
he does.
Want
Knock it off.
The situation.
Coming into the season, we thought the offensive line was going to be trash. We thought it was going to be, this was the only thing that had to change. And it wasn't going to be any better because they didn't improve it that much. They actually played very, very well. They've gone games against some big teams and given up no pressures, given up no sacks. And so I think that's the nicest improvement on the offense, but I don't think you can give the rest of it a grade until you see what they can all do on the field and not finding excuses, but
no,
to have Saquon come back from a major injury and you knew it was going to take him 2 or 3 games. Unfortunately, we had to play 2 games in 4 days to start the season. So, you didn't even get him a chance to get his legs under him to show what he could do. By the time he gets to week 4, he starts to look like himself. He really comes through. They beat New Orleans. He looks great. And then he gets hurt again. And so you're like, it's all starts and stops. I think it's there. And I think that's why I can say that. I think it's there. It's just a matter of getting everybody back on the field.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you, Joe. I mean, I think that incomplete's the, if you're going to give a grade, it has to be an incomplete for that reason. I mean, we got glimpses of what, Barkley could give to this offense, both, toting the rock and in the screen game and in wheel routes coming out of the backfield or motioning out into the slot. We saw, what Slayton can do when he has other guys where the defense has to roll coverage to other guys like a Shepherd, like a Galladay, and he can still take the
John
top
Ross,
off.
too. I love that.
John Ross also, who we didn't really talk about. Rudolph, I think, has been as advertised. He's the veteran tight end. He may not be spectacular, but some ways you'd almost rather have him in there than Ingram. You've seen what, Garrett has tried to come up with creative ways to utilize Tony. And we've seen some of that when he's been, like you said, when he's been healthy, so I agree with you. I think it's there. But I think we won't really know until we get a 3, 4, 5 game stretch where all of these guys are able to play together.
And to just defend the offense a little bit, and I'm not here to defend Jason Garrett, but if you go to the Washington game, Washington has one thing on defense, right? They have those 4 first-round studs up front.
Yep.
And what did they do all night? They did zone reads all night long. Yeah. Daniel Jones ran the ball all night long. They're able to change to whatever they need to change to do what they have to do. And again, you're getting to know what Kadarius Toney is. I mean, we all saw him at Florida, but we all know the NFL is a different place. Now he can throw the ball. Now he can catch the ball. He can, run screens. He can do this. He can do that. So you can't say, they don't have a lot of plays in for him. Well, again, he hasn't played a lot. He's probably 75%, 80% of himself. And you don't know the guy can throw the ball 80 yards down the field till you see him do it in practice. And then you go, maybe we could use this. Maybe this could happen.
And who knew that Daniel Jones could be QB1, RB1, and wide receiver 1 in the same game?
Although I do think Mike White did try last week to kind of beat that.
And I think that's the thing about Jones, and this is the last thing I'll say about the offense. I really think that Daniel Jones doesn't get, Rabbi knows what I'm going to say, doesn't get the due that he's given because he didn't come out touted as Lamar Jackson. He came out touted as Eli Manning.
Right.
Well, he's a much, much more athletic person than Eli ever was, right? He's twice as fast as Eli. He doesn't mind running the ball. He can do all these little different things. And everybody's like, oh, look at the tall, lanky kid run down the field. He's an athlete, and the guy can catch, he can throw, he can run, he can do all those things. And I think as that develops more and they use all the different skills that he has, and you're able to get all these other skill guys on the field, the offense should be in fine shape. I don't know if GMs and coaches are going to last to see it, but I know that what they built was a very good idea. And the offensive line has worked with the new coaching staff, and I think that it's fine.
This might be a chicken or the egg question where we can get to a long time down the line, but eventually, especially on the Saquon front, when these injuries become a Saquon problem, then it becomes a Giants problem. I personally don't think we're there yet.
Right.
But I think eventually the question needs to be raised.
I think you're not there yet for one reason, because the last injury was just a bad luck. He stepped on something, but it could happen to anybody.
Absolutely.
So it's not like it's not like he's made of glass where every time he gets hit, he's got to go take 3 plays off or take a half off. He's got a knee injury and 2 ankle injuries that could have the 2 ankle injuries in his career could have happened to anybody. He got stepped on in the first one, and he stepped on somebody in the second one. You kind of just have to say, let's work our way through this and get the 6 years out of him that we expect to get, and go on from there.
And we'll see how that goes forward. Let's talk about the defense, Anthony.
Yeah. Coming into the season, I think one of the biggest strengths for the Giants coming into this year was the defense. Coming off a season where they finished in the top 10, they finished strong in the second half of the year, was really a catalyst for the Giants' second half resurgence, and at one point being on top of the NFC Eastern Division. But they got the offseason addition of Adoree Jackson. They were getting back Xavier McKinney back from injury. James Bradbury coming off a Pro Bowl appearance, and as a second year with Blake Martinez being the quarterback, so say, on defense, along with Jabril Peppers. Improved play and showing that that the Giants actually had the better end of that Odell Beckham trade. 5 games in, they're giving up close to 30 points a game. the big defensive players that we saw last season are not there. We're seeing Adoree Jackson dropping a short interception. We're seeing penalties on defense at the wrong time, like we saw a few days ago in Kansas City. And also, we're not seeing the pass, we're not seeing the aggressive play calling from Patrick Brown that we saw last season. Now, part of it, obviously, Martinez, Jabril Peppers being done for the season. That takes away a lot from the defense as far as play calling. But even before those injuries kicked in, it felt like I saw a lot of miscommunication, especially on the defensive back end, when it seemed like there were guys. I think back to the opening game against Denver and even against the Rams, where it just seemed like guys wide open. There wasn't any communication or talking among the players, but before even during plays. But the last few weeks, the Giants defense has stepped up a little bit, but it's definitely a far cry from what we saw, what we were anticipating coming into this year. And I ask you, Joe, from what you've seen so far in this defense, what grade would you give them through the first 8 games of the year? Or is it still to be determined situation that we see with the offense?
You froze up there. Okay, Anthony, you froze up just at the very end.
All right. Let me repeat that. I was going to ask, from what you've seen with the defenses, what grade would you give them through the first 8 games of the season? And is it just a still to be determined scenario that we're seeing on the offensive side of football?
Yeah, I think, obviously it's still to be determined because we're only halfway through, and they did look very good Monday night. They were able to do what they wanted to do on Monday, which was take Kelsey out of the game and take Hill out of the game for most of the part. And then again, say if you guys want to run the ball because you don't have all your guys either, as far as running backs and all stuff. But they did make Mahomes run around a lot on Monday. He did have a lot of pressures on him. He was not able to find some guy just running down the field wide open, even in those scenarios where he was where he normally is scrambling all over the place and find some guy open. So I thought they played very well Monday night. They played awful on opening day. I agree with you. The Denver game, we were there. I think they gave up 12 third down conversions or whatever it was. It was crazy how many times they got to third down and then couldn't get off the field. So, I think Adoree Jackson played very well. I think he's done it, but Bradbury has not been the Bradbury that he was last year. Bob Papa even said it on one of the radio broadcasts. He goes, "Where's the James Bradbury from last year?" Because not only has he dropped a few balls this year that were interceptions last year, he got used by McLaurin in the Washington game. He's been abused by the top receiver on the other team. And that thought process that Rabbi and I had before the season started of, hey, Adoree Jackson's got to play really well because we know the other side settled, and it hasn't been. And then losing Blake Martinez is just a huge, huge loss for this team. Not only stopping the run, but the communication issues, getting everybody on the same page. They've had to put Logan Ryan back in there to try to give him the calls and try to get him going. And again, yeah, you're right. They've looked better the last couple of weeks, Anthony. But they were a major disappointment opening day. And then 4 days later, they didn't look good again because McLaurin was able to do whatever he wanted to. In the Washington game, guys were open in the Dallas game all day long. So they really have not. And again, so you don't know, right? You beat New Orleans, which is like playing Denver all over again. And yet they go ahead and beat them. And they were able to take care of Taysom Hill and those guys. And then obviously beating Carolina is no big deal because it's Sam Darnold. But
without Christian McCaffrey.
Yeah, without Christian McCaffrey. Right? Like I said, it's Sam Darnold. So you don't know. Did they play well enough Monday night? Again, is the Kansas City offense struggling that much that they weren't? But I think it's the game plan, and I think that's the plan they like to play is keep everybody in front, make you go 10, 12 plays, because you'll make a mistake. You'll get a holding call. You'll get a drop pass. You'll throw a pick. You'll have a fumble, whatever it is. They got more turnovers this week, but I don't know going forward is Kansas City that bad? We're going to find out when they play a backup quarterback this week in Green Bay. Or did we really step up, or is that just because that's our game plan and that's how we want to play? You gotta remember this theory that they have, Anthony, is they don't play one style of defense. You know, they really figure out against the other team what they need to do. Obviously, Carolina, you force Sam Darnold to be to throw the ball because they don't have anything else. And they wind up winning that game by getting 4 turnovers and all of that stuff. You go into Kansas City and you say, we got to take Kelsey away. Even if Tyreek Hill gets a few balls on the outside for 8-9 yards here and there, keep everything in front of you, rally to the ball. You got turnovers, right? You got Kelsey to fumble, you got Mahomes to throw interceptions. If they hadn't jumped off sides, he would have thrown an interception to lose the game. So I think their game plans are getting more and more solid. I think they're figuring out what they can do with the guys they have left. Again, without Blake Martinez, without Peppers, you're gutted at that point. And getting all these other guys to play well. McKinney's obviously stepped into his own and played well. The front line, you made the sacrifice to let BJ Hill go because you had other guys to step in there, but then that took them a few weeks to get going. I think Leonard Williams did nothing for the first few weeks until somebody finally said, hey, you know, you did really good last year and you got paid. How about doing something? And he started to step up a little bit in the last few weeks. So, you know, again, we're going to get incomplete grades on everything that we talk about for obvious reasons, but I think it's very tough with the types of injuries that they've had and to who they've had them to give them much of a grade at this point. I hope what you saw on Monday night gives them a little bit of this is how we're going to play. And again, you're going to go play a Raiders team now that is changed a little bit. Their top receiver's gone. You know, they're in flux also with a lot of different things. We'll talk about that later on in the show. So who knows? Can you get going? Can you get the week off? Can you get healthy? Can you come back and you know, put Tom Brady in his grave again, since he can't beat a Manning in New York? But anyway, we'll see where that goes. We'll see where that takes us, and hopefully they do just keep improving and figuring out who they have, and these guys stay healthy, because it's been awful this year as far as these injuries go. I looked at the injury report today, and there were 12 guys on it for the Giants and 1 on it for the Raiders, and that's just it's just tough every week to see it.
And the only thing that can pretty much stop them is a DWI charge. Let's talk about the coaching for a quick second. Now, I am a pessimist, so I'm incomplete. It's not really the greatest grade I would give this coaching staff. I think Patrick Graham has done a good amount of work, and especially in these last 2 games, to kind of adjust his defense to the personnel that he has. Mm-hmm. And again, if it weren't for the offsides call, then tick wouldn't have been negated. The 2 offside, well, we'll talk about the offsides call, obviously, in Washington, but in this game specifically. But then, coaching-wise, you saw what happened with the taunting penalty, which is also just as important as that. So those 2 penalties cost the game for the Giants. They could have easily won. They would have had a better than 50% chance of winning in my book. And obviously, an offsides call on a game-winning missed field goal, that's a win in my book. So now you're at 4-4 over stupid, dumb mistakes that could have been easily fixed coaching-wise. Then you have the Rams game, which was an unequivocal disaster.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if Daniel Jones was healthy. That's perfectly fine. Game was a blowout. Jones stays in the game. Hell, when Jones was practicing on Wednesday, someone in the media had to tell Joe Judge, hey, your quarterback is practicing. I give Joe Judge an incomplete because it is only year 2, and I don't see the same issues that I saw in the Shermer era, and I shudder when I say the word Shermer era in any way, shape, or form. But when it comes compared to last year, where a lot of people praise Joe Judge's bulldog mentality, his defense just playing like him, there have been some missteps. Injuries, though, are a big part of it. But what do you think that the coaching staff, and we're not even going to get into Jason Garrett. I'll leave Jason Garrett all up to you. But what do you think of the coaching staff from this year as opposed to last year?
Well, I think the biggest change that they made this year was with the offensive line coaches, bringing in extra guys, putting the tight ends coach with them and working together so that the group works together. And like we said, that's been the most improved unit on the entire field has been the offensive line. So
Absolutely.
I think they took what their issue was and addressed it and fixed it. I don't like, and again, how much talking can you do to a Dexter Lawrence to say, don't jump off sides on field goal? I mean, that's
Of course,
that's not really,
but it's still a discipline
to me,
issue that you've
that's
seen
not
sometimes.
coaching. That's him being anxious to a point. And again, there's a lot of talk about if those calls are really honest or not, because those offensive guys on kicks stay still and the center snaps the ball and it always looks like I know because I'm standing there, I do it every week. It's hard to tell sometimes if a guy is leaving early, if he's not, if they're using silent count, but I'm not going to say he wasn't or was, but I don't think that that's necessarily like he hasn't drilled it into him not to jump off sides. Dexter Lawrence been playing football since he's 8 years old. He knows not to jump off sides. So yelling, watch the ball, move back on the outside guys. They were all doing it on the sideline. That doesn't keep anybody from doing it. It's just an emotional thing. It happens. It's not, to me, that's not a coaching thing because this isn't junior high school. You don't need to tell that guy not to jump off sides or not to watch the ball. It's not a fourth down where you say, hey, they may go for it, they may not, see if he's going to do it. It was a field goal. You know he's going to kick it. There's no fake. They're just trying to get in there to block it. So I think, and again, if he had made it, no one would have said a word, right? Like if the kicker had made a 35-yard field goal to win the game, nobody would be talking about it. So again, I don't put that on the coaches. What I dislike about the coaching staff at this point is we've heard so much about conditioning. We've heard so much about it's better to do it this way because we get them ready for the second half of the season. We try to avoid these soft tissue injuries. We do all this. And that's the entire roster has had hamstrings, quad pulls, different things that you would think would be avoidable if you just had stretching and you did all the proper things. They talk about having all the information on every player's back, giving guys days off during the week and managing their load and yet guys are still getting hurt and still having all these same injuries. I mean, everyone has a quad or a hamstring. It's unbelievable. So I think that's my disappointment in coaching staff wise, without going into specifics of play calls and those kind of things, because we don't really know what's in the book and what's not in the book. But I would say that the issues with the timeouts are tough. There's, Eli said it the other day, because I watched the Monday night game with Eli and Peyton. I don't watch those other three clowns yelling at each other because they're just complete idiots. Because Steve Levy thinks he has to make a joke out of everything that happens. I watched it with them and Peyton said, he goes, what's taking so long? Why is every play going off with 2 seconds on the play clock? Even when they hurry up, they're not getting the ball off. So there's something missing there with communication. There's something missing there with play calls. There's something missing there with terminology, whatever it is that they can't seem to get up there and make their adjustments and have plenty of time to do it like most teams do. So that's the one thing I have on the coaching staff, but I would say that they've actually took care of some problems because they took care of the offensive line. And that was obviously the major problem that they had. You don't know the defense is not going to, guys are going to suddenly drop interceptions. I mean, you put them in the position to play, you call the right coverage, the quarterback throws the wrong ball and you get nothing out of it. That's not coaching. Again, these aren't high school kids. These are professionals. You put them in the spot to make a tackle. Look at the Minnesota game the other day against Dallas. Ezekiel Elliott's on the 10-yard line. He's got to get to the 2 for a first down. There's 3 guys out there and all 3 of them miss him. That's not coaching, right?
The best part of pinball is when you see something like that.
Exactly. So that's not coaching. That's, you guys got to make that play. We put you out there. We made the right call. We covered the right guy. There's 3 guys out there. To me, it's like a baseball manager. Once the manager gets to the 9th inning and he brings in his closer, he should be able to go home because he did everything right to that point, and you're giving it to the one guy whose one job is to get 3 outs for you. I shouldn't get fired because you blow 3 or 4 saves in a row.
Yeah.
I got you to that point. I put you in the position you should get fired. We should
Right. Right, Joe. And I've talked about this on the show all the time about, in all sports with owners having knee-jerk reactions to things that where, the coach gets way too much credit when the team is doing well and way too much blame when the team is not. And they think that, well, we can't fire the players, so we got to fire the coach. Why? If it's not the coach's fault, if he hasn't lost the locker room, I mean, unless you are firmly convinced that you've already got somebody on that sideline who is better than the guy running the team right now, what's the point of firing him in the middle of the season?
Right.
I mean, they
talking about firing him in the middle of the season, though. No one is talking about firing him in the middle of the season.
What I'm saying, no, Rabbi, what I'm saying is,
I know what you're saying, but
is that people, that because there's always going to be haters who think that, everything is the coach's fault. If a player does this or doesn't do that, that it's a coaching issue. More often than not, it's an execution issue by guys who are supposed to be professionals, and people need to stop automatically knee-jerk reacting. Oh, it's the coach's fault. Get rid of him.
Well, by the way, I'm in favor of executioning this segment and going on to the next one. By the way, I found Jason Garrett's playbook. It's right here. It's like 2 pages long. I need to see what the playbook is for 4th down and 1. Oh, run it up the middle. All right. They finally called the one play that Peyton Manning actually said is almost unguardable for defensive coordinators, and they found it, which is good for them. But that's Jason Garrett's playbook. All right.
All we know is 4th down always goes to Eli Penny. That's all you need to know. So
yes, and then he does this, and then you lose that 4th down. Okay. And now, everybody, feast your eyes as we focus our attention to the other team in New York, the not as bad 2-5 Jets, but technically it's just because they've played one less
contractual obligations,
so
Joe. Contractual obligations.
No, well, contractual obligations is you're doing it. They're coming off 2 wins in the first 7 over solidified playoff teams in Cincinnati and Tennessee, ruining gamblers' bets and suicide pools everywhere. So they're the Jets. We know this. There's still a lot of fixes to be made. And Jay, let's ask Joe about them, starting with the offense.
All right. Well, I mean, look, I'm going to give you the numbers, even though they're probably going to make you cringe. I mean, they're 30th in the NFL in points per game, and a little over 16. Their point differentials -13. They're 11th in 3rd down conversions, which is surprising to me at 42.5%. They're, around the middle in red zone touchdown rate of almost 58. But I mean, they've only made 19 trips inside the red zone. So that's 29th in the NFL. Michael Carter leads this team in rushing at 279 yards. That's 36. No one on the Jets is in the top 50 in catches or yards. I mean, we've talked about Zach Wilson and the struggles he's had. It's been well documented. He's 33rd in completion percentage. That's right. There's somebody who has not played a full season at quarterback who's above him. At 57.5, he's 30th in passing yards, 1,168, 33rd in passing TDs in 4, tied for 2nd most interceptions with 9. He's 28th in average yards per pass. His passer rating is also 33rd. I'm about to sneeze. Give me a second.
Bless you.
There you go. Sneeze on the truth. I mean, look, granted, we all know his offensive line hasn't helped him much this year. He's been pressured on almost 31% of his dropbacks. That's the 2nd most in the NFL. I mean, but the flip side of that is his bad throw rate of almost 24%. His 2nd worst is on him. His on-target percentage of only 70.5 is 3rd worst. Those are both on him. And I think Mike White's big game has been overblown, in my humble opinion. Yeah, I know. The 37% completions in 45 attempts are a Jet record. Yes, his 405 yards passing are the most by a Jet quarterback in forever, actually since Vinny Testaverde 21 years ago. And it's only the 2nd time in NFL history a quarterback has topped 400 yards in his first start. Yeah, he averaged 9 yards per pass.
Guys, who's the only other one? Very quickly.
The second time a quarterback's top 400 in his first NFL start.
Who's the first one?
That one.
Cam
Newton.
Cam Newton in his first game as a pro against Arizona, 430. I think.
And granted, White tossed 3 TDs, put up a 107.9 passer rating. But this is a guy, Jets fans need to slow their roll on this guy, okay? He's not the savior. I mean, this is a guy who never got onto the field at any point since the Cowboys drafted him in 2018 until now. Here's what, I looked up the athletic scouting report on him from 2018 draft. Yeah, prototypical size, efficient delivery, natural arm velocity, touch and placement downfield are strengths, quick reaction time as a passer, read, ball up, ball gone, knows how to spread the wealth, uses every inch of the passing chart, understands DB assignments, good at finding vulnerable matchups, small windows don't phase him. He stays, takes steps in the pocket to maintain his base, improved his poise versus the blitz, keeps his eyes downfield, had only one multi-interception game in his 27 starts at Western Kentucky. Good football IQ. Does have clunky feet, needs to stay in rhythm and balance when dealing with pressure. Checks the boxes with his size, arm strength, and passing instincts. And here's the thing that people need to hear. Passing instincts to be an NFL backup and potentially more. So, we'll see what happens with the short week in the game against the Colts Thursday night, and the league gets some more film on him. Bare minimum, he's starting Thursday night. I guess depending on that and how fast Joe Flacco has picked up the playbook will determine who starts the game after that. I'm not surprised that Robert Saleh has remained upbeat. That's his thing, especially coming off a win. But I think the growing pains are going to continue for the Jets offense, no matter who's taking the snaps, who's running the ball, or who's making the catches, Joe. I honestly, for me, I don't know what this offense is supposed to be. And I'm not sure if it's where I thought it would be, because is there something worse than an incomplete we can give this offense?
Yeah, I think you got to forget the last game, first of all, because that kid's not going to start for them more than 2 more weeks. Maybe Joe Douglas is smart enough to trade him for somebody. But you and I said from the beginning that they needed a veteran in there because Zach Wilson, A, was going to struggle at some point, and B, was going to get hurt at some point. So again, we can all pat ourselves on the back because thanks to me, you guys know that all young guys get hurt. So we know that. So they should have been more prepared. They run out and get Flacco in the middle of the week. Obviously, they didn't know what they had in this guy either because they ran out and got Joe Flacco the day after Zach Wilson was put on IR. So they didn't know that he was going to be any good either, and he's not going to be any good. He's going to be exactly what you just said, Jay. Great IQ for football at Western Kentucky. That doesn't exactly scream number 1 pick. That doesn't scream Aaron Rodgers to me. That screams, like you said, he's going to be holding a clipboard behind Zach Wilson, and then they won't have to pay somebody like Flacco because they know the kid can step in and play. Again, if Jet fans want to trade Zach Wilson, go right ahead. That's if that's where you want to go with this. I was still waiting for the thank you cards again from allowing them to draft Sam Darnold. I didn't get any of those. I got them for 2 years in a row, and all of a sudden I don't get those anymore. Thanking the Giants for skipping Sam Darnold. But again, the offense is what it is. These guys are growing into what they're going to be. And as soon as the league starts to see who they are and realize what their strengths and weaknesses are, that'll change. The running back had a great day. I'm guaranteeing you he's not going to run for 400 yards against the Colts next week.
No.
He's not going to run for 200 yards against anybody for the rest of the season. So, and the quarterback's not going to throw for 400 yards against anybody else for the rest of the season. And again, he's probably only going to play for 1 or 2 more weeks. So to put any credence into what you saw last week is a waste of time. The game doesn't even. The idea for the Jets this year, as we all said before the season started, is not to win games. It's not to try to win a division or to get in the playoffs. The idea for the Jets this year is to develop Zach Wilson, figure out their offensive line, who the top draft pick there is sitting up in the stands. He's not playing anymore, Becton, because he's hurt. You have to build this team up and see what you got. Maybe Michael Carter's really good. Maybe this other guy's, we don't know yet. But they shouldn't worry about it. They shouldn't get excited and go, oh, this guy is going to we're going to beat Buffalo and we're going to win 9 games. You're not. And you shouldn't even want to at this point. It's not about winning. It's about learning who these guys are, about getting them excited to play in New York. The crowd's been great. I give them a lot of credit because that's how Jet fans are. They're fantastic. They take anything they can get and they make it into a big, big show. That was a fantastic thing for them the other day to beat them at home. The crowd's going nuts. Robert Sala's going right. The defense played great. Fantastic. But that doesn't mean you're suddenly going to win the Super Bowl. You're not beating the Rams, and you're not beating, you're not beating a good, I almost said Kansas City. You're not beating a good Green Bay team. You're not beating any of the top elite teams in this league.
Hell, they're not even beating they're not going to beat the Patriots.
Okay, let's continue. Let's move on as we continue on the Jet bashing hour. This is Joe Tufaro, Jay Kaplan, Anthony Strait, and Stephen Rabinowitz. Anthony, we need to talk about the defense. Let's go.
By the way, FYI, Jay, me and the 4 guys dressed as Teletubbies that showed up at MetLife Stadium disagree with you, okay? We watched
by the way,
Hall
wait a
of Fame
minute.
performance, okay?
Anthony, how did the Mike White chants go on Sunday? Because I don't know, was it Mike White or was it Let's Go Mike White? Because I'm not sure.
No, it was definitely,
that's like the worst name to chants.
Yeah, it was definitely a Mike White chant. It was a good story.
Mike White. Okay.
Yeah. It was a good story. His parents were there. Great
Anyway, let's move on.
Not taken away from that.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though, with the Jets, and they're one of the youngest teams in the league. I think they are the youngest team in the league, to be honest. Defensively, statistically, they're terrible. But when you watch the Jets, and this is beyond the eye contest, the Jets defense have kept them in games, but the offense has been so bad that, and look, when you're on the field for more than 40, 50 snaps, eventually you're going to give in. And what else can you do? But since the New England game 2 weeks ago, when it felt like it was just a total lack of effort from everyone across the board, the Jets defense, for better or worse, have tried to kept them in games. Just the offense didn't do anything. And then you watch the 2 wins where they slowed down Derrick Henry. They really frustrated Ryan Tannehill and beating Tennessee. And then and I was at MetLife Stadium on Sunday. Jamar Chase, who's been red hot as a rookie, he did get the 1 touchdown, but they held him to 32 yards receiving. Joe Burrow, they were able to get pressure on him all afternoon. And believe it or not, Shaq's lost his interception. It's the first interception that the Jets defense had this season. He leads the team in interceptions with 1. And I was on a tip pass late in the 4th quarter. But individually, Quentin Williams, 4.5 sacks. He leads the team in that category. And the defense really missed TJ Mosley a few weeks ago as when they went up in Foxborough, because a Patriots team that couldn't score any, that really struggles to score points, just had their way with that defense. But overall, when you look at the defense and take statistics aside, what do you see out of this Jet team that, okay, there's some positives that can move forward, and maybe it's just something that they could build on, and if there is such thing as a grade that you could give them through the first half of the season?
Yeah, and again, giving grades isn't a great thing at this point because it's so early and so many things are going to change. You all remember last year we gave away the MVP of the league in week 6 and we were way off. So I don't want to do that anymore. But I think the Jet defense, the strength of their defense for the last few years has been their defensive line. And I think that's kind of the key to this whole thing, is how well those guys have developed, how well they've played. Even though Leonard Williams left and a couple of other guys have left along the way, they seem to be able to identify guys who can rush the passer. Quentin Williams had a great game against Cincinnati. They've got some young kids who can play different things. But again, you have to go back to, look, Bill Belichick hates this team. And if you didn't know he was going to score at every opportunity he had and come up with a game plan to beat these guys as badly as he did, then you haven't been watching football for a while. So that's what I'm saying, is when you have a team that needs to win a game against the Jets, they're going to win the game. Okay. Cincinnati was caught in the, hey, look who we just beat, and we have to go play somebody else next week, and we got a Jet game in between. Just like Kansas City had the Giants this week, same thing. They had their break in their schedule, which was us, which is playing the Giants, and now they got to go play Green Bay and Tampa and all these other guys. And so I think that the Jets, again, let's not get overly crazy about anything, but he seems to have gotten guys to buy in because the safety's playing better. He doesn't want to be traded anymore. They're not talking about those types of things. They're not talking about bad things anymore. They're talking about improvements, talking about how good Mosley looked coming back from injury. Adds a lot to that defense. The defensive line's been very good, gotten a lot of pressure on guys. Again, they're going to have bad days. And when you get really, really skilled guys going up against them, they're going to figure out ways to do it. But they're smart because Salah's a very good coach. He's doing the same thing. When you play Tennessee, what do you have to do? You got to take away Derrick Henry and make Tannehill beat you. When you play Cincinnati, you got to take away Chase, and you got to it's this pretty, if there's a simple formula there, he knows it. He's smart enough to do that, and they can execute those game plans. And I think that that's a positive for him, and that's a positive for that defense. So they look good. I watched the whole game on Sunday. I thought it was impressive. I didn't buy into the quarterback is the next Joe Montana, but I did notice that that again, and that kind of throws teams off a little bit, but they're smart about how they play. And again, they're not always going to execute well. They're going to make rookie mistakes. They're going to take penalties, which they've taken a lot of, but he seems to have a grasp on game planning, and he seems to have a very good staff in place on his defensive side. And on the offense, again, I don't even know why you'd want this guy to succeed. You drafted Zach Wilson to be your quarterback for the next 15 years. Why do you even want this guy to be good? You want him to be the backup quarterback and not have to pay somebody a lot of money to be a veteran backup quarterback. So
I think if we combine Zach Wilson's ability to hit the deep ball, which he did a lot versus Tennessee, and Mike White's ability to complete the intermediate 0 to 15-yard passes, which is all he did on Sunday, but did it very well, and made it into one quarterback, the Jets would be good. Unfortunately, science does not do that.
I would say right now,
until now.
I would say right now, and what you just said, Rabbi, is spot on, because again, if you listen to Eli and Peyton and all stuff, you take what the defense gives you, and that's what he was doing, right? Mike White was there as, I don't want to embarrass myself in front of my family. This is my only start I'm ever going to have in a game. I'm going to see 2 high safeties. I'm going to run the ball. I'm going to take the check down. I'm going to take this guy. I'm going to take this guy. Now I can throw it deep. The other guy is not doing that yet because he hasn't developed to that point yet, and he wants to make the big play because he knows he's got a job for the next 10 years. So it's a big difference, and Jay knows from playing quarterback.
Yeah,
I want
and Rob, I'll give you the floor in a second. And Joe, that goes back to something that I was trading texts with these guys, talking about Mike White, and everybody's talking about it. I'm like, how big a game he had. We don't know how the playbook was or was not scaled down for him to put him in positions to do what he does. Is it just for all we know, they went as conservative as possible and he just executed it very well, playing to his strengths, and they didn't ask him to do too much. Yeah, he put up numbers, but it's not like he was being the big play guy that they're expecting Zach Wilson to be. Right. So, and that to me, that's also, I got to give it, if that's how it worked out. And as a former quarterback, I can see that being the case. I got to give Mike LaFleur a little bit of credit there, Rabbi. And that to me leads, in terms of coaching on that particular instance. I know we've ragged on LaFleur all season so far. I think you got to give him a little bit of a nod for that.
Well, I want to talk about that in a second. I want to first mention how the reason why I think the Jets are better than last year is simply because of the coaching. Adam Gase was terrible, obviously, not there. And Robert Saleh, even though he still has no idea how coach speak, he needs to take a class from Mike Tomlin and how to actually coach speak. And because literally when they asked him, so what's going to happen is how's Mike White the quarterback? He's like, we'll see what happens. I'm like, no, that's not what you said.
Yeah, that's
the
wrong answer.
But that's because Robert Saleh just needs more training in how to be coach and how to really talk to the media. But in Robert Saleh's first year, he's the cook, and he's been given some pretty shitty ingredients, and they've made a 2-win soup out of it, and it's fine. It's fine for what he's done, and I can't see this coach failing, at least right now. I don't know if they'll succeed, but I don't think he'll be at Gase level. I don't know about LaFleur, and I think Anthony has talked about two things that has been wrong with LaFleur. The offense was in 2 of these 7 games lifeless. The Denver game where they got shut out 26-0, and the Patriot game where they basically got hit in the mouth, and obviously you lose Wilson halfway through it. But they got hit in the mouth and they really didn't get up off of the campus. When Wilson was injured in the third quarter, the game was over. And what Mike LaFleur did last week in changing his style, other than moving up to the booth and not staying on the sideline, is basically look at the game differently, cater to a pro-style offense, and really have a patient quarterback. So what I'm asking you, I think Saleh gets it incomplete, and you can comment on that as well. But, and Anthony has also mentioned, the mix of a first-time offensive coordinator and a first-year quarterback is not good. It's not good in any way, shape, or form because they're both learning on the fly. And I think that's the hugest problem with this team coaching-wise. It's no knock on LaFleur. It's no knock on Zach Wilson. It's just not a good fit, at least this season. And this is what happens when you start rookie quarterbacks. Growing pains. It is the expected growing pains. But Joe, I want to hear what you have to say just about the coaching mix.
Yeah, but it's the same thing that goes for everything we said is there shouldn't be any expected results from this season. This is what this season is all about. You want LaFleur. LaFleur's a good offensive coordinator. You want him there. You want him calling plays. You want him to develop an offense. Who cares who he's doing it with at this point? At least he's got somebody he can mold. And again, if you say,
unfortunately, right now it's the wrong guy.
yeah. But I'm saying if you have 5 years of LaFleur and 5 years of Zach Wilson to grow together, that's exactly what you want. What the problem they're having now is, and everybody watched Michigan State last week, and Michigan kept getting caught with too many guys on defense. Why? Because they have an NFL guy trying to call college defenses, and he didn't understand the rules about switching guys out and in, and he got caught 3 different times. Well, again, that's exactly what LaFleur's doing. He's learning on the fly. How am I going to communicate? Where am I best upstairs? Am I best downstairs? Am I best calling the plays? Am I best going through somebody else? Am I the big picture guy? Am I the little picture guy? All of this stuff will get straightened out. Nobody should care how many games they win. No, there shouldn't be. The NFL should strike all the statistics for the Jets this year and just say, who cares? I don't care if Zach Wilson winds up 32, if he winds up number 1, if he winds up 17, if he throws 9 picks, if he has 2 fumbles, who cares? It's all a learning experience. What you hope he doesn't do is become the other guy that I didn't like in New York, where he never gets better.
Which one?
Yeah, where he throws 17 in college and then throws 19 in his first year and then throws 21 in his second year and throws another 19 in his third year. That's the guy you don't want. But if Zach Wilson, when we look at him next year and you say, okay, they got him a few more weapons, the offensive line's better, he's had 2 years with his offensive coordinator, does he make improvements? And you're not, we talk about this all the time. You can't grade these guys for 3 years because you have to let them acclimate to the league first. Then you have to get them ready for their team. And then you have to make them the leader of that group and see where they can go. And hopefully your coaching staff stays through all of that. And that's what's been wrong with the Giants is they got a guy that they wanted to be their starting quarterback. And now he's gone through 3 coaches and there's been none of that from day one. I wish from day one they had hired a coach, an offensive coach, and Daniel Jones and said, go get him. We'll see where you are in 3 years instead of firing the head coach, firing the offensive guy, firing this offensive guy, getting another guy. That's why it's been a mess. So
again,
and
that's why let's go ahead.
All I'm going to say, and I'm going to leave y'all with this, and what's going to be interesting for me to see after this season concludes. Woody Johnson is back in his, as the owner and the guy who, is running things. He was away for 4 years as an ambassador to Ireland. His brother was in charge. His brother is a very patient man. His brother understands the process. Woody Johnson has always been a little more guided by his emotions and a little more knee-jerk reaction. So we'll see if he can, remain not play to those instincts and let this actually develop. Because I agree with Joe. I think if you give this time, you will see positive results. It's just not going to happen in year 1 or even year 2.
All right, so we've ended the Jets bashing hour, and let's move on to the rest of the National Football League. The first 8 weeks of this 2021 season have been surprising, to say the least. And just like any Manning cast you watch on Monday, you never know which way these panelists will go. I might possibly have one of us eating a chicken with our bare hands coming up on the screen in just in a couple of minutes. It could be negative. It could be positive. I don't know. Let's see what happens. Let's see what has surprised us in the first half, starting with Joe.
Starting with me. Okay. So I say,
sorry to put you on the spot here, but we have to let you get your opinions up first. You are the
yeah, no problem. I struggled with this a little bit because I think the whole season's been a little crazy. But I picked the AFC West as my biggest surprise as to how poorly they've played most of the time, but also what's going to happen going forward. And it was funny, I texted this to Rabbi the other day that this was my choice, and all of a sudden more things blew up in Vegas, and no pun intended. Things went crazy in Vegas. And so here you have a team in the Raiders at 5-2 who have won some impressive games and have lost some awful games. And all of a sudden you come to work, 3 weeks ago and your head coach is gone. With obviously I can't imagine there was any inkling that he had been this way, that he had said any of these things, because there was no problem with any of his players. I mean, Carl Nassib never had a problem with him. Derek Brooks never had a problem. All these guys that he's coached through the years. And for Mike Tirico to come out, unfortunately for him, the week before and say, oh, everything was great with John. I can't imagine John would ever be like this. So obviously it was very well hidden. So to come into work one day and all of a sudden your head coach is gone, a head coach who had a 10-year contract, don't forget, when he was signed, that you figured that was your stable point, and make Mike Mayock in as GM. So all of a sudden they're in disarray, and then the whole thing with Henry Ruggs is just a disaster. To read that story this morning was amazing. To be going 135 miles an hour or 127 miles an hour in a craft, and just the whole thing is just a complete nightmare for that team. And you just wonder now, how does that affect the other guys? How do they play this week? What's that team going to be like going forward? So I think, having them at the top makes the division even more in disarray at this point. And then you got a Chargers team who some weeks they just don't bother to play defense, like in the Cleveland game, which was like the most entertaining game in the world. Like that. No, that was a high school game. That was a college game. That was
ethnic football.
It was Oklahoma State against Oklahoma, and that was, hey, let's see how far we can throw it, fellas, on every possession and have fun doing it. And then other days you get shut out. You lose, you beat Washington, you lose to Dallas, you beat Cleveland, you beat Kansas City, you lose to Cleveland. It's just, they're just not a consistent team at this point, and I don't think the defense is. And they're counting on Eckler and Williams and those guys to continue to do well. The Chiefs, I don't know at this point. I can't imagine Patrick Mahomes is suddenly Sam Darnold. I mean, he's not. No. Suddenly he just doesn't look like himself. Now, again, Jay, as you know, and we've talked about this all the time, you get enough film on somebody, you get enough film on a team, even that offense, as somebody said the other day, becomes unscary to you. You go, oh, okay, this is how you cover, this is how you stop the run against them. You double Kelsey, you pressure Mahomes. That now, again, there's another offensive line that was completely redone from the Super Bowl. All 5 guys were replaced since the Super Bowl. So to think that they were just going to walk out there and play just as well as the other guys had the year before is a little bit naive, I think. And so now they're struggling with an offensive line problem, which makes Patrick Mahomes human, which makes him have to throw on the run more, which makes him make more mistakes, which, again, he's prone to do. And with Patrick, it's even more prone almost for him to make mistakes. If you notice the other night, he never just throws the ball away. He throws that when he's running towards the sideline, he throws it inbound. and still tries to get somebody. And that's where he continues to get himself in trouble this year.
Yeah. And Joe, you notice a lot of defensive coordinators are deploying that too high shell against him because they have a feeling that he's not going to be patient and just, take what is given and just dink and dunk the ball down the field, because it's not been in his nature in his, short NFL career. He wants to make the big play. He wants to find Kelsey deep over the middle. He wants to find Hill on the fly or on the post, deep down the field. He's constantly looking to make the chunk play, and defenses have recognized, well, if we play too high and keep everything in front of us, his impatience is going to be his undoing, and we'll just wait for him to be impatient and capitalize. And so far, a lot of teams have. And
in the NFL these days, I mean, going back to the Giants, how they played defense in their last 2 Super Bowl years, did the same thing. If we can force you into a 14, 15, 16 play drive, you're going to fumble. You're going to take a holding call. You're going to drop a pass. You're going to do something that's
going to take a sack at a wrong time.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they're doing to him this year. Like you said, to make him be patient, it's not even that. You're leaving it up to the officials then for not calling somebody for holding, for not doing anything else, which is not going to happen. But
also to be fair, Joe, I mean, Spagnuolo's defense hasn't done that offense any favors. We talked about it on Saturday. The Chiefs win when that defense is in the middle. They just only have to be in the middle of the NFL. They don't have to be top 10. They just can't be bottom 5. But this year they're bottom 5. And, I don't know how much, getting Melvin Ingram, to, from the Steelers for a 6th round pick to try and improve that pass rush is going to help. But I think that defense is not holding up their end. And I think Mahomes is feeling the pressure to make plays because he doesn't feel like his defense can keep the other team out of the end zone.
Well, and if Mahomes is now only scoring 14 points like they did against the Giants, then it makes it even more, right? That he's got to be feeling it even more to say, hey, we used to score 50. And the defense didn't, like you said, defense didn't have to be any good. They could be. And what did it do? It forced the other team to throw the ball all the time. Well, if you're only going to score 14, 17 points, the other team can run against you, can keep you out on the field longer, can expose you to more things. So I think that they're in a little bit of trouble. They don't look good. Denver, we thought Denver would be what they were. Their defense is good. They play well. The offense is Teddy Bridgewater's offense. He's inconsistent. He's good, but he's not great. And then they trade Von Miller. And you go, okay. So you didn't want to be successful. You didn't want to try to win this division. You're a game out of the division league. You're at 4-4. Raiders are 5-2. They're imploding. The Chargers are inconsistent. Kansas City's giving you a chance to move up, and you go ahead and trade your best defensive player away. So I guess I'm surprised at this division because it's gone from, wow, this is a fantastic Western division with a lot of high power offense and some good defenses. And it's turned into the NFC East from last year where nobody can get out of their own way. I mean, they're 4-4, 4-4, 4-4-3, 5-2 without a head coach and without their star wide receiver. So what's this thing going to be? This is going to be the division where somebody wins 8 games, 9 games this year and winds up winning it. So I think that has been the biggest
themselves. Unless the Chiefs actually become the Chiefs again, Joe.
Yeah, you just don't know. So, but like you said, Spagnuolo's defense has been disappointing this year, and I'm not sure what that's going to turn into. He is very good in situations like he was the other night at the end of the game to put those blitzes on and to do it. So when he knows you're throwing the ball, he can stop anybody. But it's tough when you're only scoring 14 points, as we know.
I'm going to pull rank here because I want to kind of go off of Joe's point from my surprise, and that is how bad the AFC has been in general in finding a top team. You look at the NFC for just a quick second. The Cowboys are 6-1. I think they're 6-1. The Packers are 7-1. The Bucks, even though they lost this week, they're 6-2. The Rams are 7-1 and the Cardinals are 7-1. They're consistent and they are Super Bowl contenders. I don't know what anything in the AFC is right now. If you want to go down the line, we talked about the AFC West just now. Let's talk about the AFC South. The Titans are leading the AFC South. they looked really good over the last few weeks. Now they lose Derrick Henry, who is essentially most of their offense. They've lost to the Jets. I know they didn't have both their wide receivers in that game, but they still had Derrick Henry in that game, and they still lost to the Jets. So that's a black mark on you right there. The NFC North is such a cluster. Anthony will talk in a second about the next. Well, the AFC North. I'm sorry. Don't correct me. You know what I meant. So it's just a complete cluster. Anthony will talk about the other team in just a second that resides in Ohio. But you saw Cincinnati this week. They're young. I know they were leading the AFC, but that team should have easily won the Jets game. And then Joe Burrow literally makes a dumb pass. And I love the man to death. He won the college football team that I love, a national title. But he makes a dumb pass on what is still a pretty good amount of time. And that essentially costs the Bengals the game. The Ravens, they look okay at times, but in that Raiders game in the opening game and then against the Bengals themselves, they just kind of looked lost on a lot of occasions. They're still not the best team defensively out there. And I still have a lot of prove-it stuff that I need to see with Lamar. He's great, but when he's bad, he can't really get himself out of that same hole.
No.
Pittsburgh is another team. They're 4-3. They were given up for dead at the beginning of the year, but then someone has to realize they lost to the Raiders, the Bengals, and the Packers. Those are pretty good teams, and only one of them are in your division. So guess what? The Steelers are now 4-3 and are inconsistent as the rest of everybody. And they might have a kicker eventually. I don't know if they're going to just continuously go for two. They did it when they had Chris Boswell at times for one season. So who knows? And I'm a little disappointed in the Bills as well. They fumbled against the Steelers opening weekend when the Steelers had a game plan to go at Josh Allen and a team that doesn't really have a running back. They have some good skill position wide receivers, but Stephon Diggs isn't the same player he was last year. And so Josh Allen is making some moves, doing some good stuff, but they had a 4th and 1 against Tennessee, and they literally stumbled their way to a loss. So all I'm saying is this. Don't be surprised because Kansas City just got the gift of God, the Diego Maradona of breaks and seeing Aaron Rodgers go out with COVID. I would not be surprised if they pulled the Seattle Seahawks from the season in Super Bowl 49, where they started out 4-4, and then all of a sudden you're like, what? They're the number 1 seed again? Where are we giving this team up for dead? And you know why? Because the rest of the AFC can't do jack-ish about it.
You're right, Rabbi, and that's the thing is that, and I'll tell you, in a battle of backups between Chad Henne and Julian Love, I'll take the veteran. And not just because he's a Michigan guy. And, you talk about all of the teams where we can't really get a handle on them. The Patriots are another team that, we can't seem to get
Jordan Love, by the way, not Julian Love.
Jordan Love, sorry. You wonder, who are the Patriots for real? Which team are they? Are they the team that, opened up a 54-13 kind of whoop ass on the Jets, or the team that, has struggled at other various points so far early in this season? I think they're going to go as far as Mac Jones's development takes them.
I didn't even get into the Patriots because they're 4-4 and they've literally beaten one competent NFL team, and it was this past week at home in Los Angeles.
But here's the thing, Rabbi. They play in the East where, they can beat up on the Jets. They can beat up on the Dolphins.
They don't have any more opportunities to do it, and they only have one more against the Dolphins, who they lost to.
Right, but here's the thing, though. And they might wind up sneaking in as a third wild card. And once Belichick gets into the playoffs, all bets are off. The AFC East is the AFC period, Rabbi. I agree with you. It's anybody's conference right now.
And then I'm going to get to Anthony next because he has the other AFC team I didn't mention. Yeah, it's anybody's conference for them to get their ass kicked by the NFC in the Super Bowl. Anthony, let's talk about the other team in Ohio.
Yeah, it's funny that Joe mentions teams that can't get out of his own way, and it's the Cleveland Browns without question. Think about this. They're 518 penalty yards. It's the 4th most in the league. They're 4-4. They're sole possession of last place in the AFC North. And by the way, they haven't scored more than 13 points a game in almost a month. this offense is absolutely abysmal, and it's virtually broken at this point. Baker Mayfield is playing with a toe labrum in his shoulder, and Jack Conklin, tackle, is out. And by the way, Kareem Hunt hasn't played at all because he has a calf injury. And I look at the box score, and I know Odell Beckham is there, but I don't know if he's actually participating all that much in the offense. Look, it's a complete joke. I mean, Kevin Stefanski, who was coach of the year and did such an amazing job with this Browns offense a year ago, just is clueless right now. I mean, the Browns literally cannot get out of their way. They only have 3 interceptions on defense. By the way, I mentioned there was only 2 teams that are worse than the Browns. And the Jets, we just finished talking about them getting up those interceptions this season. Their score differential is 183-4 and giving up 180, which is tell you this is a team that really doesn't play with a lot of margin for error whatsoever. And outside of the game against the Chargers, where both defenses took a day off, this offense look god awful. I mean, they just look so bad. I mean, look, the Steelers are the Steelers for what they were. But when you look at the game against Minnesota, well, Baker Mayfield misses a wide open Odell Beckham Jr. streaking down the middle, streaking down the sideline, and he throws it 5.5 yards behind him. I mean, Baker Mayfield is literally 27th in QBR rating if you look at his stats. I mean, he was noticeably bad at the beginning of the season. I don't know if it's the injury. I don't know if clearly he's not 100%. But you think about this. They've only scored 13 points in the last month, and they've won 2 of those games. So the Browns defense with Myles Garrett has pretty much held up their end of the bargain. But this offense is so bad. And you got the Odell Beckham soap opera, obviously. They didn't trade him. They basically told him to go home. He didn't practice this afternoon. Maybe they'll release him. Who knows? But we look at the fact that Baker Mayfield has not been able to get him the football. And then when he has tried, like on one particular play, Odell Beckham half-asses it and just goes up with a one-handed attempt at a catchable football. This is just a lot going on with this Cleveland Browns team. And this is a team that was one defensive stop away from possibly upsetting Kansas City in the playoffs a year ago. And now in a tough division where they really are struggling to score points right now, and they have no resemblance of a running game, it's going to be hard to see Cleveland turn it around because, let's face it, the defense can't win every game from them. They're going to have to actually get some points on the board. You just want to beg them if the time is to go to the backup quarterback and let Baker Mayfield just kind of sit out for a little bit. If his injury is actually hurting the Browns more than it's helping at this point.
Yeah, I think losing the running game was big, though. They, getting guys hurt, losing Hunt and those guys. That's big because he needs play action. He needs to do a couple of different things on offense. And we all know about Beckham. There's no mystery that he's there for himself. He's there to take himself out of the game after every play, so he takes his helmet off. He's got to jog in before halftime because the camera goes to him. That's just how he is. And he doesn't play every play. He does the thing where he goes out and touches the cornerback on running plays and doesn't bother to block. And that's just how he is. It's unfortunate. The kid's very talented, and it's very sad that he didn't put any work in from the day he was drafted. But that's who he is, and that's who you knew you were getting. Anthony, you mentioned it before about who got the better of the trade. If Peppers never plays another down, we still got the better half of the trade. Because you don't have to put up with his antics.
Addition by subtraction
anymore. So
yeah,
I thought he might do better in Cleveland because Landry was there, and kind of an equal guy. He's a friend of his. They played together. Maybe he would keep him sort of like, hey, we're the 2 top guys. Let's go out and do something and show the league who we are. Mm-hmm. But even those guys haven't been able to gel together and play together. So.
Yeah, it's funny. We watched this. I watched this team last year, and I think I said this during the show. We were talking about when we did a show right after Beckham got hurt. Like I said it then, and I'm saying it now, and I still believe it. This Browns team is better served without Beckham there. When Beckham is there, Baker Mayfield, for whatever reason, feels compelled to try and force feed him the ball, and there's a difference between the Sixers force feeding Joel Embiid in the low post as there is trying to feed a receiver like an eagle like Odell Beckham. It undoes your offensive scheme because it changes the way you play offense, and it's undoing what makes that Kevin Stefanski's offense work as efficiently as it did last year. It's wasting a really good season on the defensive side by Myles Garrett. A lot of people had the Browns as the team to win the AFC North, and but the backsliding and the regression because of, and Beckham is a part of that. Is the other reason why they are like every other division in the AFC. It's up in the air. It's an utter crapshoot right now.
Well, Jay, like we said in the previous segments, a quarterback needs to walk up there, read the defense, and throw to what's going to be open, figure out the coverage, and take what the defense gives you. And if you're constantly getting the guy on the outside going, just throw it to me, I'm not, and then he does on his route, which means it doesn't take a guy. How many times do we watch the replays and you say, oh yeah, this guy took the safety out of the middle of the field and moved the linebacker over 3 steps, and his corner went with him to open it up for this guy. Well, if this guy doesn't run his route because you're not looking at him and he feels like he's not getting the ball, guess what? The safety stays on that side of the field.
Yep.
None of the other stuff works. And
it's a thing, and it's something that maybe not all fans get. There is a difference between a quarterback putting a ball up and for his receiver to go get it because he has confidence in that guy to high point the ball or make a combat catch. When you talk about guys like DeAndre Hopkins, you talk about guys like Davante Adams, the receivers in this league who can defeat any coverage, and the quarterback is not force feeding them the ball. They just have that type of connection. That is not the case in Cleveland with Mayfield and Beckham, and it is detrimental to the offense. I'm the only guy talking NFC here. And I got to tell you, I was all set to talk about, the Arizona Cardinals. And even after a tough, hard-fought loss to the Packers, to me, they were still the biggest surprise so far in the first half of the season. I was all set to talk about how quarterback Kyler Murray's been putting up numbers that probably had him telling Aaron Rodgers at their midfield postgame hug that he should be the other quarterback in the Allstate commercials. 72.7% completion percentage, averaging 284.6 yards per game, 17 touchdowns against 7 picks, 8.9 yards per attempt, a 110.4 passer rating. I was all set to talk about DeAndre Hopkins, 35 catches, 486 yards, 7 of those 17 Murray touchdowns, and how Ian Murray have been putting together a pitch and catch season like Rodgers and Davante Adams typically do in Green Bay. It's going to talk about how J.J. Watt and James Conner seem to have resurrected themselves in the Valley of the Sun. How getting tight ends.
It seems like you're talking about them right now, actually, the way that everything is going.
Not ruining my flow. How getting tight end Zach Ertz was a great move to upgrade the tight end position. 7 catches, 108 yards, and a touchdown in his first 2 games out there. 15.5 yards per catch, to give Murray and Coach Cliff Kingsbury yet another offensive weapon. How this defense has done a good enough job. Number 10 in yards allowed, number 6 in yards per play, tied for 4th in sacks, led by Marcus Golden 6 and Chandler Jones is 5, and number 6 in passer rating against, for a team that nobody, including me, expected to be 7-1 at this point. And then the 7-1 LA Rams did this. Joe, you kind of stole my thunder there. I was already set with my visual aid. Von Miller? Are you kidding me? Really? I guess that's what you do when you already have one of the best offenses in the NFL. You upgrade a defense that already has a pair of offense records in defensive tackle Aaron Donald and defensive back Jalen Ramsey, along with outside linebacker Leonard Floyd, who actually leads the team in sacks with 6.5. Miller has 4.5 sacks this season. His 110.5 career are second most among active players. He's made 3 All-Pro teams, has 8 Pro Bowl appearances, was the MVP of Super Bowl 50. Yeah, the Rams gave up a 2022 second rounder and a 2022 third rounder to Denver to get Miller, and one of those may wind up being a quarterback, Joe. But the Broncos are paying the remainder of his 2021 salary. He won't be the focal point of the Rams defense. That's 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, Donald. And he won't have to be their loudest voice in the huddle or the spokesman to the media and to the public. That's Donald and Ramsey. He gets to be a role player with no pressure to be a leader, and that should make him even more productive. Think about this, guys. Teams already have to game plan for Donald as what's called a -2, meaning the other team usually needs at least 2 offensive players to counter him, which decreases players available to them on the offensive side. They also have to game plan for Ramsey as a -2, depending on where he's aligned because of his role as the star position in this defensive scheme, which makes him pretty much unavoidable, to quarterbacks. They have to know where Floyd is, and now they have to worry about Miller. The flats of the field aren't safe. The perimeter and containment areas aren't safe. The middle of the field is not safe. And the pocket is certainly not safe. And that should be a scary thought for the rest of the teams that have to face the Rams this season. A defense that now may have enough playmakers to match Matthew Stafford, Cooper Kupp, and company on the other side of the ball. Man, even the Arizona Cardinals have got to be going, uh-oh.
I don't like stats. I'm not the greatest stat person, but I'm just going to say this before we let Joe go. Past 5 years, or since 2016, top linebackers who have the most pressures, percentage-wise. Number 1 is Von Miller with 15.9%. Number 5 is Aaron Donald with 15%. Damn.
They get after
That's
it.
all I have to say. Damn. Okay, so
you figure the guy, and just to finish that point, they're the only home team there because we know how to start.
Absolutely.
They now have a top defense. They know they have Stafford for 2 years, 3 years, maybe
more.
They need to make it happen. And the Super Bowl is there this year, and that guy wants LA to be the center of the sports world. And the Dodgers blew it for him, but that's what he wants. Because they're building a new forum also for the Clippers.
Mm-hmm.
So they want that whole area.
Talk about teams that don't matter in Los Angeles, by the way. If you're going to go with the Chargers, you might as well go with the Clippers.
Build a new building, they'll come. So it'll be very interesting.
It'll be a very interesting second half of the season. All right, because Joe needs to eat dinner or enjoy any other games that is a reasonable hour. I'm starting to realize why the West Coast is great after all. We're going to let him be as we move on to the hardcore. Thank you so much tonight, sir. And we'll have a lot to talk over the next 2 months on the gridiron. Thank you, Joe Tufaro, of many things, and we'll definitely talk in the future, sir.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Good
Have a good
night.
Good night.
See you.
And that's our show. No kidding. We got a little bit more. All right. Now time for all things NCAA on the hardcourt. NCAA basketball, a college sport that actually gives smaller schools an equal chance to win the sport's national title. What a goddamn concept.
Cincinnati.
Yeah, we can talk about that blue in the face. We're going to look at 3 teams to watch in our first segment. This is teams to watch. They not necessarily are national title favorites, although Jay went the chalk route, and we'll talk about the national title favorite. One has a very interesting future, and one is someone that makes me goddamn sick to my stomach, but we have to talk about them. The interesting future. But the interesting future team will be discussed right now by Anthony Strait.
Yeah, and my team to beat has my computer somehow freezes up on me. It's actually Memphis Tigers, led by Penny Hardaway. Now, here's the thing: they are the defending NIT postseason champions. Penny Hardaway has actually won 20 or more games in his first 3 years. And I was actually looking through this Sports Illustrated magazine, and you know what? They are actually a feature in their college basketball preview, and it comes down to their here was my laptop has finally decided to act right on me again. I gotta love technology, right? Anyway. It comes down to the 2 recruits, Jalen Duran and Imoni Bates, so 2 6'9" and 6'10" wing guys, respectively, who is going to be added to returning players like Landis Nolan, who led the team in scoring. But that's not the most interesting thing about this team. The assistant coaches are actually interesting as well. When you add Rasheed Wallace and Hall of Fame head coach Larry Brown as assistant head coaches to your coaching staff, that is an interesting twist in itself. And here's the thing, though, Rasheed Wallace is only 46 years old, but he has a wealth of NBA experience and being relatable to the younger players, at least this generation of talent. And look, with Nick regime aside, there isn't much you can say about Larry Brown other than the fact that the man knows his basketball. And to have those two IQ guys as part of your coaching staff, it's got to be wonders for Anthony Hardaway moving forward. The thing is going to be basically, can the Tigers take that next step? I mean, can you build on winning the postseason NIT and maybe finally getting be on the right side of that postseason bubble and getting into the NCAA tournament? And if you can, how quickly can your two top recruits adjust to the pace of the college basketball game? As most young players, they transition from high school to college isn't always the smoothest one, but it's going to be on Hardaway to kind of make all these pieces gel and come together. Otherwise, Memphis is going to be a fun team to watch, and don't be surprised if they're in, they're one of those at-large bids to play in the NCAA tournament comes March.
Well, they're going to be a very interesting week conference. I think they're still Conference USA. They're not Conference USA, but they're AAC.
Yeah, American. And by the way,
yes,
I will see them Thanksgiving weekend. They are a part of the opening tournament that would be taking place at the Barclays Center. So I'll be there to see them firsthand. So it should be.
There's going to be a lot. I might go out and see a couple of college basketball teams over the next few weeks because New York is almost a mecca. Literally of college basketball is a mecca of preseason action. All right, Jay, let's talk Gonzaga.
Yeah, it may be, as the rabbi called it in our production meeting, the captain obvious choice for team with Final Four aspirations to watch. But considering the season the Zags put up last year, undefeated until losing to Baylor in the national title game and then losing two of their best players in Jalen Suggs and Corey Kispert to the NBA, they'd have been worthy of this segment on that basis alone, in my opinion. Then you had the fact that, both center Drew Timme and point guard Andrew Nebhard are returning, and that they nabbed arguably the best high school player in the nation, the number one prospect in the class of 2021, a guy who has been called a unicorn in 7'1" Chet Holmgren, plus a pair of five-star guards in Hunter Salas and Nolan Hickman, along with Iowa State transfer Rasir Bolton, who was all Big 12 last season. He put up 15.5 points per game, and like Nebhard, is a solid ball handler and passer, 3.9 assists, and he can shoot off the dribble. All of that is why they're even more worthy of this segment, in my opinion, and other folks seem to agree, as Gonzaga is atop several preseason polls, such as ESPN, The Sporting News, AP, and USA Today. Granted, unlike most of Mark Few's previous teams, there are only three players with any experience. Timme Nebhard, whose return is kind of flying onto the radar. I mean, he's one of the best point guards in the country, and forward Anton Watson. As a three-year player, Watson has the most experience despite starting less than half the games he's appeared in. 10 of the 17 players are sophomores or younger. Unofficially, this is the youngest team Few has fielded in his 22 years in Spokane, and he figures to have 4 true freshmen be major contributors. Will the two bigs front court approach work with Timme and Holmgren? UNC struggled with it the last few years of Roy Williams' tenure in Chapel Hill, but Timme and Holmgren are not your typical bigs. How long will it take for Few to figure out a defensive scheme that works best with the newcomers he has, and how the rotation and allocation of minutes will work out? Will the newcomers accept reduced minutes compared to what they were used to in pursuit of the national title that the Jags fell this short of last season? I personally think all this is going to work itself out over the course of the season. And once again, the Zags will have a heavy non-conference schedule to get themselves ready for March. Texas visits on November 13th. Alabama on December 4th. They had the Las Vegas showdown over Thanksgiving against UCLA on the 23rd of November and against Duke on the 26th. And then they finished their pre-WCC slate with Texas Tech on 12/18. Last year's team was so dominant that championship or bust expectations followed them all year pretty much from jump. That won't be the case this season, which could make them even more dangerous come March. And I think that come Selection Sunday, they'll once again be on the one line.
Oh, absolutely. And you see, obviously, where Gonzaga makes their worth. Their last few preseasons have been money. And I'm very, very interested to see how all of the new recruits and Gonzaga has just remade their school into what they are now. And they are a powerhouse. A team used to be a power.
No, and it is telling, Rabbi, how far Gonzaga has come. That Holmgren, who was, like I said, on a lot of people, he was the number one, recruit in the nation. Out of all of the blue bloods that went after him, he decided to go to Gonzaga. That is
a blue blood. That's a blue blood now, though. Mark Few needs to be given credit for what needs made that group. Okay.
Yeah, he doesn't get enough of it, in my opinion.
The preseason number 9 team in the poll is what we're going to talk about. And I could talk about Duke all day. I could talk about Wendell Moore Jr. I could talk about Jeremy Roach. I could talk about Mark Williams. They're good players. They're coming back. I have to talk about Paolo Banchero, who is, thank you, by the way. You love stepping on my lens. This is one of the top NBA picks in the nation. And he's basically Blake Griffin. He is basically the second coming of Blake Griffin when he was in Oklahoma. And that is a tall task, but he is a 250-pound power forward. He definitely was in the conversation and is still definitely in the conversation for top freshman in the country. He is the ACC freshman. He is the ACC preseason player of the year. He was the Washington Boys Basketball Gatorade Player of the Year. He's had back-to-back school titles. He is someone who can do so many things as an athletic big. He can run in the transition of any offense and can actually modernize Duke a little bit. He has an NBA-ready frame, and his speed is really, really, really something to see. And he will play the 5. In a lot of times this year, Mark Williams is not always going to be on the floor. He's not a 40-minute guy. Paolo is about a 30 to 35-minute guy. And this guy could be a man who just dominates this conference. Now, the conference in general, first of all, obviously, John Shire is waiting on the staff. This is the final season for Coach K. You'll see the farewell tour everywhere. He is one of the most successful college basketball coaches we've ever seen. I think the only person who can compare in his league is John Wooden and Dean Smith. Those are the only 2 coaches who I can even compare to. And it's going to be very interesting because this Duke team, no team in college basketball was massively hit with after COVID stuff last year. That's why we're in this situation right now. Duke missed the tournament last year. They're back. They're in I hate to say it, Jay, a weaker ACC than normal. It hasn't been the same in the last 2 years.
Yeah, no, I can't argue that.
They only managed a pair of 4 seeds last year with Virginia and Florida State. Virginia's a little bit, you can never count Virginia out because every time you think Virginia is going to be really, really bad, they're really good. Florida State, Leonard Hamilton has built what he's built over there. And as we'll talk about in a few minutes with Hubert Davis and UNC, the cupboard was not there when Roy Williams left Chapel Hill. He left Hubert Davis with a lot of pieces to play with. But Duke is the overwhelming favorite right now in the ACC, and for very good reason. They have the best player in the conference, and they are a team that I cannot see getting anything lower than a 2 or 3 seed come tournament time. A lot of stuff has to go wrong. Like if they have the disastrous non-conference schedule they had last year, we might be able to talk. But I think right now Duke is going to be Duke again, and that's pretty obvious.
I can't argue with Rabbi. I think you cannot understate the emotional aspect of these guys wanting to send Coach K out on a high note. And I got to tell you that that showdown over Thanksgiving with Duke versus Gonzaga to me is going to be one hell of an out of conference game for both teams. I will of course be rooting for Gonzaga because I root for UNC and whoever's playing Duke, but it's going to be a very emotional year in the ACC, and I expect Coach K to get the full send off at every road stop along the way. I'm going to be interested to see just how he's honored by the Tar Heels when Duke travels to Chapel Hill.
I don't know if that's the first or second game this year, but it would be very apropos if it was the second game. I don't remember. I think it is the second game this year. So
I think it is.
It'll be very apropos with that being the final regular season ACC game that Coach K ever has.
Yeah.
Okay.
Amen.
Now our players to watch it. Now our players to watch a college basketball. One who 2 years ago was in Kentucky playing behind Tyrese Maxey and Emmanuel Quigley. Those names are very familiar to all of us now, aren't they? And then the other two were second team consensus All-Americans in 2020-21, but only one was the unanimous winner of the John Wooden Facial Hair of the Year award. I think we'll get to that one in a second. And if you don't know who that is, you don't watch college basketball.
Tell you.
But Anthony, take us to your favorite college basketball team in Michigan.
Yeah, Hudson Dickinson is going to be my player to watch. And you look at his stats last year. He averaged 14 points a game, 7.5 rebounds, and 1.4 blocks. Made 59.8% of his shots and shot 73% of his free throws. That's the thing, though. He almost scored exclusively around the basket for the most part. Either 5 to 10 feet, either it was putbacks, either it was offensive rebounds, either it was like little baby hooks around the basket. But Hunter Dickinson, what I think about it is when he obviously took himself out of the draft. I think that was a smart decision because I feel like he has a high ceiling to have a game develop a little more. And right now, and to be honest, I look at Hunter Dickinson the same way I looked at Nikola Jokic a few years ago, whereas you saw the talent was raw, but you saw that there was a ceiling that was a high ceiling, that if you can develop him into more of a versatile player offensively, that who knows what can happen. And even his own head coach, Juwan Howard, even come out and said, Dickinson is a really good basketball player who can play. He sacrificed an awful lot for the good of the team and for the good of the Michigan Wolverines half-court offensive style. But honestly, he can shoot face of the basket. You wonder if you're going to see him more in pick and roll, maybe get him more involved in the mid-range game. But also he has to learn how to score to do more with his right hand. He scored a lot of baskets going to his left side as JS9 because he follows the Wolverines a lot closer than all of us combined. But he's very dominant to his left side. I mean, he can start using his right a little more, maybe get some more proper footwork and be a little more of a versatile guy just as far as how he gets his offense against points. Michigan would be a really really dangerous team. It's hard to say a dangerous team who was in the Final Four a year ago. But we look at Dickinson and the fact that he has room to grow. He has a lot of game to develop, and I see a big that could really be go from good to a very dominant player if he can just put it all together. And that's what I'm looking for right now, because he's the kind of big guy you want in a college game who can score his points in the half court, who can run the court in an up-tempo style pace, but can also defend, rebound, give you basically do everything you want out of a big. But also you can run your offense through him also, which is going to be key for Michigan, who at times, and especially in that Final Four game, struggle to find points. And that's going to be a big day. If Dickinson can be that guy to get them that key bucket or to break a scoring drought, it's going to do really wonders for Juwan Howard in year 2 moving forward.
Yeah, Anthony, especially since they lost, Franz Wagner and a couple of other guys off of that team, and as Michigan is retooling and reloading this year, there's going to be a lot more on Dickinson as the primary offensive option. He's going to be the primary game guy you got a game plan for by opponents. And the reason he came back is, he tested the draft waters, and the feedback that he got was that he needed to improve in all of those areas that you just mentioned. Needs to expand his repertoire, both have counters to his left-handed, post play, needs to be able to face up better, needs to be able to have counters, needs to, involve his right hand a little more. So it'll be interesting to see, how he puts that, how he's done what he's done with that information this off season, and how that plays out. He came back, Cockburn at Illinois came back. So the Big Ten's going to be interesting this season. You got a couple of guys who a lot of people figure were NBA draft bound, who came back this year, looking to try and, take their teams one step further than they got last year.
First of all, I think the Richter scale for the Dickinson-Coburn matchups in the Big Ten this year should be enacted, or something needs to be like reinforced on the ground. Also, we do realize this is the first year of name and likeness in NCAA basketball, and Hunter has already approved a line, and I'm not kidding, called Big Dickinson Energy. So I will by far be getting at least one of those t-shirts in the near future. All right, time to bring the facial hair on. Let's talk about Drew Timme.
Yeah, that is who I'm going to talk about. And Rabbi, just to confirm what you talked about earlier, March 5th, Saturday, 6 p.m., Cameron Indoor Stadium. It'll be senior day, Duke hosting North Carolina.
Okay, so it is at Duke, okay.
Yes, it'll be Coach K's final regular season ACC game, and it is fitting that he closes out against the Tar Heels.
By the way, one small thing, Michigan lost in the Elite Eight, and they lost to the team I'll talk about in just a second.
Yeah. Drew Timme, you know, he is my guy. And I think the best news Mark Few got this offseason was that his junior center was returning to Spokane to be the linchpin of the Zags on both sides of the ball for at least one more season. He's the preseason Wooden Award favorite. He's the Athletics preseason player of the year by unanimous vote of his college basketball staff. He's coming off a season where he averaged 19 points on 65.5% field goal shooting, 7 rebounds, and was an unstoppable floor running post up force. He averaged 1.28 points per post possession on 199 trips to the low post, according to Synergy Stats. He made Gonzaga's offense seem like they were, and I paraphrase this quote from an article in The Athletic, playing pickup against guys from the local Y. They said tired middle-aged men. Whether the Zags were playing West Coast Conference opponents or elite non-conference competition. And until the Zags ran into Baylor, an elite defensive team, in the national championship game, no one stopped Drew Timme. Based on feedback from NBA folk, Timme does need to improve as a defender, both in the post and on the perimeter on switches. He could stand to, improve a little bit as a rebounder. And a rim protector, as well as develop more of an outside in game to complement that dominant post game and his elite for a big man floor running ability. How he reacts to being the primary focus of other teams' defensive game plans this season without Jalen Suggs and Corey Kispert to help carry the offensive load will be telling. The Zags are hoping that the new starting backcourt of Andrew Nebhard and Iowa State transfer receiver Bolton are able to replace the production of Suggs and Kispert, but that's a big job for those two guys. Timme also has to figure out how to play alongside 7'1" freshman Chet Holmgren at both ends of the floor, as I mentioned in the previous segment. Their skill sets do seem to complement each other. Holmgren is comfortable playing on the perimeter on offense, letting Timme own the low post. And Holmgren is a better rim protector, which should allow Timme to freelance as more of a help defender and, be able to get more involved on the defensive glass. If Timme can do all that while still being the best player in all of college basketball, then he goes from being the preseason player of the year to the Wooden Award as the actual player of the year, hands down. A lot of people are going to be watching if he can pull it off, me included.
By the way, some players that we're not going to be talking about this segment, I just want to mention some of them quickly. Colin Gillespie of Villanova, who is a freaking beast as a pretty much annoying gnat on the court. And if you're really talking about more annoying gnats, Max Asmus is back for Oral Roberts.
Yeah.
He actually almost came back. He almost made the Wooden Award team. Buddy Boeheim got some votes. You got Jaden Ivey and Scottie Pippen Jr. Yes, that Scottie Pippen Jr. from Vanderbilt. Yes. And the last person on the list who got that one preseason All-American vote, and I don't know if Jay voted on it, Julian Champagne of St. John. So it's going to be a very interesting season.
I'm not allowed to say one way or another. I signed an NDA when I vote,
I would imagine. Okay.
As a St. John's alumni, Rabbi, I'm happy to have him back for at least one.
He's really good, and I cannot wait to see him. He's one of the best players St. John's has had in a while. Okay.
Yep.
Johnny Juzang of UCLA had one of the best tournament performances ever. Remember, UCLA was a first 4 team last year and the 11 seed that made the Final Four, beating Michigan along the way. The expectations have gone from the floor to the ceiling. They are the number 2 preseason ranked team in the country in what is probably the most loaded Pac-12 in years. But Johnny Juzang is the reason why UCLA is where they are now, along with Jamie Jasquez, who is going to be a part of that backcourt this year. That combo combined for 37.8 points per game on 50% shooting. Juzang went for 23 in the tournament and did almost everything. And if it weren't for a half-court shot that banked its way in, and one of the most impressive things I have ever seen by Jalen Suggs in the national semifinal, UCLA could have had the honor of getting their ass kicked by Baylor in the national championship game. But Juzang really improved everything last year just in that tournament. He became an ISO god, pretty much. He was a lead in ISO situations, good mid-range, started to finally come off screens, and really just went that extra level. And he wanted to come back to UCLA so he could be more fluid as a ball handler. So last year was really his first only year of college basketball. Remember, I said he was in Kentucky. He didn't really see the court. So moving to UCLA was the perfect, and is really one of the more successful transfer portal guys. I know Gonzaga had like a ton of them last year, but UCLA really has Juzang on there, and that's really going to bring a lot of expectations to Mick Cronin, who really hasn't had the cupboard full as much as he wants in UCLA, but this is the most talented UCLA we've probably seen since, can't believe I'm saying this, the days of Westbrook and Love at the college. And so UCLA's expectations are, dare I say this as an adjective, UCLA-like in 2021-22. And one of the main reasons is Juzang. This is going to be a very interesting team, and that's one of the reasons why. All right. So the coaches in our final segment range in experience. They're new faces, old faces, and new places. One has built a winner in Lubbock and only had to drive 6 hours to find a bigger spot. One who has been at the feet of a proven winner of the college ranks, and no, it's not John Shire. He takes over next year. And the third is probably at one of the toughest places, I would almost say the toughest place to coach in America, but he's had 25 years of head coaching experience. And in college, Jay, take us to Chapel Hill. Let's talk about Hubert Davis.
Yeah, following a legend is never easy. Following a legend who he himself succeeded a legend, who the team's arena is named after, one of the bluest of blue blood programs in college ball history.
No pressure, though. No pressure, though.
It's much harder, but that is the task facing Hubert Davis at North Carolina in his first season as head coach. Dean Smith is no longer with us, but his very large shadow still hangs over the program, and Roy Williams still has an office in the building where Davis hangs his hat. Davis has been linked to the Tar Heels long before he spent 9 years on the bench as an assistant under Williams, and even longer before that when he was raining down threes en route to becoming the number 15 scorer in UNC history as a player. His uncle, is Walter Davis, whose 1,863 points ranks 10th all time in UNC history, and his dad, Hubert Sr., was a Tar Heel fan even before his younger brother enrolled there, and eventually became good friends in college and golfing buddies with Coach Smith. Was it inevitable that Davis would replace Williams as the Tar Heels head coach? Who knows? But dadgummit if old Roy didn't have a hand in who would take over for him, despite his protests to the contrary. Davis is connected to all the things that being the head coach of UNC requires. The Dean Smith era and Roy Williams era. The traditional Carolina basketball system of the secondary break in two bigs, and the more modern inclinations of the NBA like positionless basketball and three-point shooting, of college basketball's long-standing traditions and its impending structural changes like the transfer portal and name, image, and likeness, and perhaps most importantly, of generations of former players and students who have the same deep-seated love for this place that Davis does. The UNC roster's undergone a lot of turnover and change since the end of last season, losing players to the NBA draft and the aforementioned transfer portal, but it has allowed Davis to start to reshape the program in his image and more in line with how the college game is being played in the 21st century. And that has been a sticking point for a lot of Tar Heel fans, that they were out of touch with the current state of college basketball. Armando Bacot returned and is the only real big man on this roster, which is fine by Davis, who wants more versatility from the roster. Bacot was putting up threes in practice, and you can expect to see that carry over into games. Davis dipped into the transfer portal, and he added Justin McCoy, a 6'8 junior forward from Virginia, who can play both the 3 and the 4, defend inside and out, and he can hit from 3. Dawson Garcia is a 6'11" sophomore big from Marquette, who UNC heavily recruited before he went to Milwaukee. And he actually put up a 24-11 game against the Heels last season and can score from all three levels, post, perimeter, and beyond the arc. Brady Manick is a 6'9" grad student forward from Oklahoma who played inside as a small ball 5, which will probably do some at UNC as well, and handled himself well defensively and on the glass, but also never shot less than 35% from 3. So expect to see Manick involved in a lot of pick and pop plays with the returning guards Caleb Love and RJ Davis, who are expected to start together in the Heels backcourt this year, with Davis running the point and Love playing off the ball, which he's better suited for. A lot is expected from Davis in his first season. The Heels are top 25 ranked by AP, SI, Sporting News, ESPN, and USA Today. And a lot of eyes will be on him as he marries the old with the new in his attempt to bring UNC basketball into the 21st century while maintaining the ties to the past. It's not going to be easy, but at the end of the day, wins and losses, especially against Duke, and making it to at least the Sweet 16 are all that matters. I'm rooting for Davis to succeed both as a Tar Heel fan and as a sports media person, because college basketball is better when blue bloods like UNC are relevant.
Yeah, and it's going to be very interesting. I think UNC needs that one. I say Sweet 16. Yes, that's not the ceiling though. If they reach that ceiling, they can kind of really get themselves kind of back on the map. And let's see what Hubert can really do in year 1. Can he get this kick started, or is it going to take a little bit of time? I don't know. Both are possible answers here. Yeah,
and from what I've read from people who are with the team every day down in Chapel Hill, and from some film I saw in a very intense scrimmage against Florida down in Gainesville the other week, it looks like the team is buying into the changes in philosophy that Davis is bringing on board and intends to continue to bring on board. That's the thing, is that the more he brings UNC basketball into the 21st century, I think will ultimately help get UNC back up into the top 10 and top 5 rankings in recruiting classes where they were at the height of their power, during the Dean Smith era and, the Roy Williams era at the beginning of the aughts. So we'll see, but he does have a lot on his shoulders, Rabbi, in his first year.
And the end of the odds too. All right, Anthony, hook 'em.
Yeah, I'm going. I'm going with Chris. Yeah, I'm going with the Longhorns, and Chris Beard, who is taking over for Shaka Smart, who leads the program to take over at Marquette. Yeah, he went home, and Chris Beard. He
went home, and it was the best option for him. That's kind of not accurate, but that's all good.
Well, Chris Beard has taken a couple of months, and he's already made some shockwaves, if you will, by landing 5 of the top transfers players in the nation. Look, he landed Marcus Carr from Minnesota, Utah, all Pac-12, Timmy Allen, Trey Mitchell, Vanderbilt's former Vanderbilt power forward, Dallin Disu, and Christian Bishop to go with Andrew Jones, who's returning, and Courtney Ramsey as well. So he's already used the transfer portal to boost a Longhorn team that went out in round 1 last year in the NCAA tournament. Abilene Christian, remember that game? And that's something that stuck with Longhorn fans for the last several months, losing to the much smaller Texas school. But when you look at Chris Beard, he's done this before. He's a coach that led Texas Tech to the national title game just a few short years ago, pre-COVID. So he definitely has the experience to get Texas back to the elite as far as they're concerned. When you think about the talent he's bringing in to go with what's already there. They're ranked they're highly ranked in the preseason polls, so it's a lot of expectations on Bill to make all this work. And it's also a good start. However, again, time will tell to see if everything gels together, just like what Hardaway is going to be dealing with in Memphis.
Yeah, and there's a lot of pressure on Beard, coming off the success he had at Texas Tech, Anthony. There are, UT fans have been kind of starving for getting back to being college basketball relevant, which they really haven't been since the Kevin Durant, Rick Barnes era kind of ended in Austin. And basically since then, Texas has kind of, slid back to kind of the middle to the bottom half of the Big 12. And there's a lot of people who are hoping that Beard can resurrect that program. He's also another guy. He's got a lot on his shoulders in year one with a lot of expectations down in Austin.
He's done a ton of stuff in making Lubbock pretty much a college basketball haven. They almost won a national title, for God's sakes, losing to Virginia 3 years ago. Okay. I'm going to pick the more out of field choice. And no, it's not Speedy Claxton at Hofstra, although we wish him luck as he, as Hofstra's greatest player now takes over for Joe Mihalich, and what'll be a pretty damn good situation, which will be a good situation for them. Can easily get
Go Pie, baby. Go Pie.
But I want to talk about Mike Woodson taking over at Indiana, having a very interesting hire for a lot of reasons. One, Woodson is a beloved son of those Indiana championship teams. But Mike Woodson is kind of a surprise hire. When Archie Miller got fired and Indiana boosters offered to pay their contract and more. I don't know how boosters get all this money for buyouts, but they do it. They do it even though they really had, they're just reaching to their pockets and be like, get out. But they did that. And look what you have now. You have Mike Woodson, who we've seen coaching in a lot of situations in the NBA. We've seen him coach the 2012-2013 Knicks, for God's sakes. I was actually doing very well with the Knicks team and actually was one of the only people that could probably tape Carmelo Anthony. But we now bring him over we now see him in college basketball, where middle of the pack preseason ranked 7th in the Big Ten. But remember I was mentioning all of those preseason All-Americans. I left one out. It's Trace Jackson Davis, who is somebody who really, and Mike Woodson, not a good recruiter, but he basically had to convince him not to go into the NBA draft. And now you have a 6'9" sophomore who can take over games, is the unanimous preseason player of the year of the Big Ten. And again, remember, this is a conference with, actually Coburn is, but he was on the preseason All-American team, but he's going to be a problem for a lot of teams. He can easily get this team to the tournament on his back. And if that happens, Mike Woodson, who is going to bring a more up-tempo style of offense, he only knows really that from the NBA. Obviously, NBA and college, you don't really get that up-tempo style, especially in Indiana. I don't know if Indiana knows what up-tempo really is, considering who Bobby Knight was. But you're going to see a much different Indiana team, and you're going to see a fun Indiana team. And for the first time, you're going to see the growing pains, but you're going to see the journey of what I'm going to consider to be one of the most interesting hires that I've seen in college basketball for years. In a league where you're going to see coaches recycled from one school to the other, somebody going from a littler school to a bigger school, or in the case of North Carolina, Duke getting an experienced player to take over as head coach. Seeing someone go back to college from the NBA, something you rarely see it. That's why I'm really interested in this Woodson hire.
Well, think about this. You talk about, experienced guys. I mean, Hubert Davis, 9 years as an assistant under Roy Williams. I mean,
I didn't realize it was 9 years as an assistant until I looked it up.
Yeah. I mean, Shire's been Krzyzewski's right-hand man for a decade now. So, it's not like these guys are, inexperienced guys being
No, I never said they were inexperienced, but they're really, really solid assistants who are ready to take that next step.
Yeah, they are. And, the thing about Woodson is that it's an unusual hire to a lot of people, but there was a lot of people who wanted Woodson to get the job instead of Miller the first time around. There is something about a college basketball, how historical it is in terms of, great players from the past and their permanent attachment to the program that they start in. Woodson coming back, it's similar in a lot of ways to the hire of Juwan Howard at Michigan, though in Woodson's case, he comes in with head coaching experience. Granted, as you said, Rabbi, was at the NBA level, but Woodson was pretty successful at the NBA level. And I think he understands, and that's the thing, is that, like, while he may not have any actual, college level coaching experience, he understands what college basketball at University of Indiana is all about. He's a program guy, and I think that will go a long way. I think it will also give him some slack as he gets acclimated to how different the college game is. But I think, as unusual a hire as it may be to some people, I think it's a great hire. And I hope he will be given enough rope to get acclimated, to build that up and build that program back up, because the Big Ten is better off when the Hoosiers are relevant.
Yeah, and I'll say this too. By the way, 40 plus years it has been from Mike Woodson leaving Indiana as a student to now come back as a head coach. But you think about this, we are a generation of nostalgia. And I feel like Mike Woodson kind of, plays into the nostalgia of those Indiana Hoosier teams that was so great. But you think about this, the players that he's coaching, they're old enough to remember not just Mike Woodson coaching the Knicks, obviously. Remember the job he did with the Atlanta Hawks. 2007, 2008, pushing the Big Three Celtics to a 7 game with the youngest team in basketball, and how they made 4 straight playoff appearances down in Atlanta. I mean, his players are old enough to remember those obviously that coaching job he did in Atlanta, of course, and again with the Knicks, and leading the Knicks to 50 wins several years ago. And Mike Woodson obviously has a pedigree. He's a great coach. He's been well liked with players that he's coached. Obviously, years of being an assistant coach, and I think it's gonna me being obviously a Knicks fan. I'm rooting for Mike Woodson. I hope he can do very well, and I hope the powers that be at Indiana are patient and allow him to build that team back up to that university back up to be a powerhouse. I mean, all 3 guys that we mentioned are going with a lot of high expectations. You just wonder if the powers that be and the boosters, you got to throw that in, will be patient enough to allow these guys to work their magic and try to bring these programs back to some kind of relevancy.
I'll tell you this, Indiana is one of those universities where, as the head coach, your job, other than to win during the regular season, your job on the recruiting trail is to keep the best players in state. And while the best players at Indiana high school basketball level will not remember Mike Woodson from his glory days as a player under Bobby Knight, those kids' parents will remember it. And that gives him some cachet when he walks in through a front door to sit down to try and recruit some of the top players in the state of Indiana. So there is something, that pedigree, that connection, there is something that, that gives him something, even though he's going to be new to doing the whole recruiting thing. It does give him a card to play when he walks into a top recruit's, to that guy's coach's office, that guy's parents' living room, to try and get that kid to stay home and come to Indiana.
By the way, boosters are evil. Just saying.
They are.
All right. For Jay Kaplan, Anthony Strait, Joe Tufaro, and myself, Steve Rabinowitz, this has been On the Sports Lines. Also would like to thank the great non-voting state of Georgia, New York's #1 QB, Josh Allen, the Giants injured reserve, Mike White, as the whole state is this week, Anthony and Joe's 200th mention of Odell Beckham Jr., the West Coast, Duke, Drew Tibby's facial hair, and for what will eventually be renamed the Davis Dome. Ladies and gentlemen, on Facebook, you can find this show right away. Facebook.com/onthesportslines. No, it's not meta just yet. It's still Facebook.com/onthesportslines. On YouTube, you can find any show right away. YouTube.com/onthesportslines. And on Twitter, we can give you whatever you want. Just ask Jay, DM him. It's at ONTH Sports Lines. We'll see you in a few weeks. Good night.
All right, good night, everyone.
Enjoy Greece, Anthony. Don't become the fourth Antetokounmpo brother.
There you go.
No, I'll be all right.